by congratulating all the other graduates who are up here with me. I think they're worthy of just as much congratulations as that applause, which I appreciate that you just gave me that. So I'm up here having finally received my doctoral degree in health services research, beginning a career, hopefully, in healthcare and the Ministry of Healing. But to give a few words of explanation as to how I got here and what's the inspiration that carries me through here, I really have to go back about 11 years ago. I think many of you know Brother Mick Joyce. 11 years ago I met him, and he introduced me to a couple really important people in my life, one of whom, Brother Bob here, the other is St. Francis of Assisi. And when I found out about the story of St. Francis, that really glued together much of what I tried to understand out of the Gospels. Jesus certainly gives us a wonderful example of how to live and how to act, but sometimes we need to gaze into another person's eyes and see the reflection of Christ in their eyes before we finally get it. And for me, it was hearing the stories of St. Francis and understanding who St. Francis was and how he lived out the gospel that finally made sense to me and finally clicked. So I'll share with you three of the big words of wisdom that Francis handed on to me that continue to motivate me and help shape how I do what I do. The first of these comes from Francis on his deathbed, when after doing all of the great things, all of the miracles, the healings, and the reconciliations, and talking with the birds, and all of that, he lies there on his deathbed, and he turns to his brothers, and he says, "I have done what was mine to do. May Christ show you what is yours to do." And that was a statement that brought me a lot of peace, because I realized I didn't have to be Francis. I had to live like Francis, but Francis tells me I need to go out and find my own path. And I think that was a really freeing message for me. At the time, I had heard that many years ago. At the time when it finally clicked, I was actually a seminarian at Borromeo, studying to be a Capuchin, and struggling mightily with that vocation, because as much as I wanted to live like Francis and be a Capuchin and live and wear the hat and wear the cord of Francis, I realized that wasn't mine to do. That was what God had called Francis and many other men to do and emulate in that way. But for me, I had to step away from that and find that Francis within myself and go out and start my ministry in the healthcare field. So after that, I entered medical school and began my studies there. And while I was there, I'll share with you the second word of St. Francis that really touches me and inspires me. Actually, I guess it was God's words to St. Francis. God said to Francis, "What before seemed delightful and sweet will be unbearable and bitter, and what before made you shudder will offer you great sweetness and enormous delight." In the field of healthcare, well, I'll tell the rest of that story. So Francis heard those words, and he went out, and he found a leper, and he was able to kiss the leper, and bring that leper in and begin to minister and heal that leper. In the field of healthcare, as any of you who are nurses or physicians or work in that field know, we encounter a lot of people who are suffering. And sometimes suffering isn't beautiful, and sometimes suffering doesn't smell great. And sometimes at 3 a.m. when someone rolls into the trauma bay, having suffered pretty severe burns to most of their body, having neglected themselves to the point that limbs are beginning to rot, I really call to mind those words, and I find the sweetness and the beauty in those people and in those wounds, and I use that to carry myself through. It's easy to see that and to recoil, and I think that's really where I hear Francis calling me to reach out that hand and to put my hand on that burn and to begin to clean off the scar tissue, to wipe away the maggots, and to clean up the puddle of vomit. But to find sweetness and beauty in that is, I think, a gift that Francis gave me. And I think the third piece of wisdom that Francis gave me was when he said to go out and preach the gospel always and to use words if necessary. And what that teaches me is that I need to learn that as much as it's a good thing for me to stand up in here and hopefully explain a few words about why I do what I do and what motivates me, that ultimately it's what I'm doing when I'm out there in the community, and hopefully the words I'm sharing today aren't all that necessary, because I pray that in my day-to-day activities I'm able to reflect those to the people around me. And I think preaching the gospel at all times, in all ways, in every step of my day is really the most, is the best way to carry forth those words of Jesus. And with that, taking Francis' cue that sometimes words are not always necessary, I'll draw my comments to a close and hopefully pray that I can go on and live out the gospel in my day.